Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Talk Thursday. On April 28, the Philippines and the United States signed a deal that will give American troops greater access to Philippine military bases and allow the U.S. troops to construct facilities and store defense equipment. Some lawmakers questioned the signing of the deal, saying it was done without the Senate's approval. Former senators who voted to close down the U.S. bases in 1991 hit the lack of transparency in creating this agreement. They also say the Senate was sidelined and kept in the dark. With us today is former Senator Rene Saguisag. He will talk about the constitutionality of this controversial agreement and what this means for the Philippines. It is good to see you again, Senator Saguisag.
Same here. Thank you.
I feel like I'm with history also. I mean, you were there in 1991 and you saw this agreement. You were there at the palace for the dinner. What was your reaction when this agreement was signed?
Well, in 1991, September 16, when we voted, it was preceded by constant communication and dialogue with the Executive Department, particularly with our former colleague, Secretary Raul Manglapus. So on that basis, he was able to convince 11 senators to vote the way Malacanang would have wanted them to vote. But there were 12 of us who decided that after more than 400 years of continued presence of foreign soldiers on our soil, it was time to spread our own wings, and so we rejected the treaty. Mm-hmm. And what I would have liked to have seen here was the same kind of transparency and accountability that marked our 1991 vote. And when we explained to the people why we voted the way we did, they accepted and we moved on, despite the fact that all the polls were showing that we were unpopular. I mean, that
it wasn't the stance of the majority. Yes,
more than a clear majority of Filipinos wanted the bases to stay.
Yes.
Now, as of today, were I still in the Senate, I would have asked or requested or pled for the same cooperation. Maybe consult the Senate, the Council of State, and not limited to a few. And you know, Maria, it was only because of your kindness this afternoon that I finally am seeing a copy. I have made previous requests. I was at the dinner for President Obama last Monday. I was talking with my friends. One of them, very close to the president, had to say that he had not seen a copy of the agreement either.
Yes.
And this is supposed to be for 10 years, but extendable.
Right.
So this is an impact on the life of my grandchildren.
What do you make of the argument that this is still an extension of the Visiting Forces Agreement?
Well, that's pretty debatable. I have to read the fine print. And I think that is why some people have made up their minds to go to the Supreme Court. And I would not want to make a prediction, come out a false prophet.
Yes.
But this is perceived to be a GMA Supreme Court. But nonetheless, it really should be tested in some such tribunal to decide how matters like this will be handled in the future. It cannot be limited to the Secretary of National Defense, our good friend Gasmin. And why did not Secretary Del Rosario sign for us? I mean, there is a message that
president to president,
either parity between the civilian and military authority, or that Gasmin decides the future of my grandchildren.
I see. I see. What do you make of statements from senators like Trillanes who claim that this agreement is something the Philippines needs and is a kind of security blanket? These are his words, against China's aggression. Have things changed? Does the Philippines want this?
I have always agreed with Lord Palmerston that no country has any permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests.
Yes.
And that is why I'm open to dealing, negotiating with anybody.
Yes.
Meaning, unlike the previous treaties, when there was tremendous American influence.
Yes.
And today, really, many people have changed their minds after 9/11. Because we could not really deal with the Talibanic fundamentalist threat. So this is a case where if we had been consulted, I personally might have suggested, okay, let them come in, rotational or permanent basing. Put them in Ayungin or Scarborough Shoal. So that would send a message and will also strengthen our UNCLOS arbitration case that's now pending, I think, in Switzerland or The Hague.
Correct. So you agree with the essence of this deal, but not the way it was done?
Well, the procedure was very faulty. When you decide something that will affect 100 million Filipinos, it cannot only be limited to the children of God in Malacanang. Meaning, it will affect my grandchildren. So, that is the procedural side.
Yes.
On the substantive side, I need to look again because scanning this, there was mention of humanitarian, etc.
Yes, that's
and
the other thing they said. Sure, yes.
Yes, but anytime it would result in possible, actual clashes,
Yes.
then we might want a larger group to decide, not only Malacanang, and a few trusted people
Yes.
whose names you keep reading, we don't even know who they are. Who elected them? I mean, so here, for legitimacy and acceptability, it's better to involve as many elected people as possible. Our Constitution speaks of the Senate. Now, our own Senate has its own problems now with the
It's
pork
under its
barrel,
own-
etc.
yes.
But still, the institutional arrangement is that if it impacts on foreign relations, where we are supposed to speak with a single voice,
Yes.
at least consult the elected elders or betters
So
in another branch.
But let me play devil's advocate. So the U.S. forces, so 1991 we shut down the bases, and then in 2002, U.S. Special Forces came back into the Philippines after 9/11, and it was they came in to Zamboanga, and I'll show you this, right? They were allowed to set up temporary bases, not bases, but a temporary spot in Zamboangas in the Philippine base there, and then 10 years later, more than a decade later, they're still in the same cargo containers that were put on top for where they were. Could this not be seen as just arrangements inside military bases?
Well, in 1991, among those who voted with us were President Estrada later and Senator Enrile, and I know that what I see from this little bivouac, very different from the commanding heights of the presidency. They see things I don't.
Yes.
But I just want to be told, to be consulted, and not to have to wait until our interview finally to get a copy. So the procedure, definitely I don't want to see repeated. On the substantive side, I need to look again. My quick reading, defensible, debatable, and so this may be what we will see other groups filing the Supreme Court maybe as early as next week.
And what do you think is the right path for the Philippines moving forward?
Pardon?
What do you think is the right path for the Philippines now, moving forward?
Well, I don't know whether we can make a sounding for people, because I'm really afraid that a good number of them would really still want statehood. But
Yeah, if you go by Pulse, the last SWS survey, which said 85% of Filipinos like the Americans, and then the Pew Global Attitude Survey said as many as 70, more than 70%. We like Americans more than Americans like themselves.
well, Americans have been very good and also very bad. Meaning coming here at the end of the century because McKinley went down on his knees
Yes.
and was told to Christianize us. And those were the days when they would sing, "Oh, the monkeys have no tails in Zamboanga."
Yes,
and
I
then
remember
civilize them with the krug. And then the bells of Balangiga. I want them returned because that was church's property.
Yes.
I have seen them. I mean, outside of Cheyenne, Port Warren, and it would be good. There are 3 bells, one in Korea. I mean, in 1941, we were one entire military base.
Yes.
But that didn't prevent the Japanese from coming over, invading us, conquering us. So today, when we are theoretically independent, like I have said, okay, let's deal with anybody. If it is in our best interest, why not? But that was not the position taken by the presidency, which treated us like children.
So, Senator Saguisag, if a Supreme Court case is filed, do you think it will prosper? How will the Supreme Court vote?
I earlier said, when I was a younger lawyer, I could predict what the Supreme Court would do better. Today, I am very reluctant to prophesy because, like I said, I may be condemned as a false prophet. But I think if the Supreme Court will anyway sustain this,
Yes.
it may send a strong message that there should be wider consultation and involvement, and not a case like this where I went to the dinner and that was what I was told by a good friend. He had not seen it either. It wasn't available. So only now am I seeing it. So I could not have, along with millions of others, try to influence what Malacanang would enter into.
Well, let me ask you, so given the changing geopolitical situation now, I mean, in your mind, what's changed in terms of the U.S. role, given China's rise?
Well, really, things are volatile. Who would have thought that Japan, our conqueror then, would here be making sounds or noises supportive of our stand? So again, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests.
When you voted against the basis in 1991, it's many, many years since then. I mean, did you make the right decision? Was that the right choice for the Philippines against the majority?
That's for others really to say. We flatter ourselves that we voted on the right side of history.
Yes.
If you look at the former military bases now, they're thriving, more employment, etc. So that was not an easy decision to make. I remember that President Cory called Butch Aquino and me to Malacanang and very nicely, very politely asked for our votes. But Butch and I told her, please ask us another. Because after more than 400 years, under Spain, Britain, Spain again, the US and Japan, really time to fly and spread our own wings. So that was stopped because of Mount Pinatubo.
Yes.
So I said in my explanation that some were saying mejor que nada, better than nothing. But we said, no, nada es mejor. Nothing is better. And like I said, for others to judge. But we flatter ourselves, right side of history, we voted on.
Right. So from 1991 until today, a lot has changed in the world. And you have a much weaker United States, I mean, still an America that is still acting as a global policeman, but doesn't seem to want to anymore. It's pulling out of Afghanistan this year. It is standing by Japan and the Philippines. This is what President Obama said. But do we need the U.S. in this South China Sea conflict?
Well, like I said, had I been consulted, I might have agreed that to this colatilia or small point, allow the U.S. basing or rotational rights in Ayungin and Scarborough.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I mean, that would be laughed at maybe because in my time in the palace, every time I would give serious advice to President Cory, she would laugh and laugh. But then when I would tell jokes, she would implement them. I mean, that was the story then. So it may be far out of the box, but the U.S. can put itself where its mouth is by even agreeing to discussing that possibility. I mean, why not basing rights in Ayungin and Scarborough? Because that can be developed by them faster than we. Because when I saw that television footage showing that our soldiers went to Scarborough, I think the Chinese
ship
might have left because they were afraid to incur tetanus.
Our rusting ship.
We really need modern equipment.
But to take your suggestion, though, if the U.S. were to base there, wouldn't it be seen as a provocative act and could be something China would have to react strongly against?
Well, the statements of Obama
very strong
were provocative enough.
Yes.
I mean, so one can read into it any message he wants. So here, you want presence? Okay, so we're offering you what we have long believed is our territory.
It's a very good idea. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good idea. But let me ask you about President Obama. We know that the U.S. actually manages the pictures that come out very well. They're very good at it. And what came out of the Philippines was President Obama in a white shirt against the backdrop of Filipino and American troops, when he was talking very strongly about how the U.S. would defend the Philippines, ironclad, and this was still even under
the word used.
Yeah, the word he used. I mean, that is a strong signal to China.
Yeah, but when the time comes, will the U.S. be ready to put itself where its mouth is? So it's a continuing, evolving situation, and there would be a lot of debate in the U.S. given what happened in Iraq and in Afghanistan.
I mean, again, Americans are tired of war. They want the troops to come back, and certainly you have a government there.
Because they would see you albums, high school albums. So many have died.
Yes, more than a decade, and they now, President Obama will have to prepare for elections as well. I think that's part of the other problem. And if you look at Foreign Affairs Secretary, the U.S. Secretary Kerry doesn't seem to be focused on Asia as much as he's focused on the Middle East. So that's kind of interesting. Are we competing for U.S. attention as well?
Well, I have kept saying here that, they really believe that it's in their national interest to do that. In Ayungin, Scarborough, we should be ready to fight to the last American. So there is intense pressure for and against either choice. But the parting messages he left really pleased a lot of
Yes.
Filipinos.
Yes.
But this is a very political issue also.
Yes.
And the American people probably are also divided on it.
Yeah.
But it's just admirable, I mean, the way they regard the fighting soldier.
Yes.
I mean, American cemetery.
Yes.
If you look at our own libingan, and you know, even the burial of a Philippine soldier in any town here, accompanied by a general.
Yes. Yes.
And really, they are taken care of very well. Prosthetics, I mean, those who have lost limbs and etc.
Yes. The research
Fantastic.
that goes in. Yes. Yes.
And I mean, we should also treat our military men better. We have had our problems with them,
Yes.
martial law and etc. But basically, although this, Winston Churchill said in 1942, after losing Singapore quickly and holding out on our part
Yes.
in Bataan, that the Filipino soldier is the finest warrior in the world. So, the Americans have good allies in
Yes.
us.
Yes.
So, we expect for them to be all-weather friends.
Well, let me ask you about that, because there will be a change in government in the United States after President Obama's term ends. There's talk about a Hillary Clinton presidency
In
in the U.S. There's talk about in the elections coming up about a Hillary Clinton running.
in
2016, correct?
2016.
2016 as well.
Well, of course, in the U.S., he cannot run anymore. Here in the Philippines, if the elections were held today, we'll have President George Obama.
Which we saw in the surveys also.
Yes,
He's
because,
running away with a wide
when I
lead.
was walking out of Malacanang last Monday, I chanced on the couple. I mean the Binays.
Yes.
But I did not call him Mr. President then because it was already flooded outside. Because the first time I called him Mr. President, his eyes moistened. The next time, Niagara Falls. So if I had called him Mr. President last Monday, probably it would have taken a longer time to get out because the driveway would be flooded quickly. But I mean, seriously, he has no opponent as of today.
Yes.
All the polls would show that.
Yes.
So, yes, I think it was he or somebody else who told me that if he had been an inch or two taller, he would have gone to the PMA. But as of the time, there was still the height requirement. But you know, if you look at Napoleon Bonaparte,
Yeah.
Nguyen Von Giap,
Those the short guys carry a complex.
the one who defeated the French and the Americans,
Yes.
102 when he died last year, was also 5 feet flat, but also a lawyer, University of Hanoi.
Yes. Yes. Well, you know him well because
Who?
you worked under Vice President Binay when he was.
We were together in Mabini as human rights lawyers. So we were,
yes.
we
human
were
rights
tear
lawyers.
gas, we were shot at, we were water cannon, we were chased. So George Obama and I go back a long way.
Do you think he'll make a good president? Do you think he would make a good president?
Well, there's only one way to find out, really, but the polls would indicate that he really is a popular choice. But I am surely committed to support him if the one he will be dealing or fighting in 2016 is Bongbong Marcos, who was also present last Monday in Malacanang.
But an interesting dinner, yes.
But with other names being floated, if I am still around in 2016, I probably will decide by then. But I know that my own family, my children,
Yes.
are really Binay fans.
Interesting.
So, in fact, one of them, the eldest, and the wife, are Obama fans. And they, in fact, asked for my invitation, and etc. They wanted it as a souvenir.
Yes.
So they are Obamanians.
Well, let me close our conversation asking you about, now you've lived through this changing the geopolitical power landscape. I mean, we've seen it change from 1991 until today. Now by 2016, both Presidents Obama and Aquino will be out of office. I guess, what do you see moving forward? In the short term, what do you see with this agreement? And then what do you see moving forward in terms of...
Well, like I indicated, it was only this afternoon that I got to see this. And there are certain outstanding provisions that I like.
Okay.
But there are some aspects of it that I need more time to look at. And by next week, I will probably be issuing a statement supporting it, but not the procedure, or maybe even morally support those who may question it in the Supreme Court. Because I want a clear ruling whether this kind of agreement can be entered in the dead of night without telling the people what our children and grandchildren will get into. Although 10 years are mentioned, there's also that clause,
The
subject
auto-renewal.
to
Yeah.
renewal or extension.
Is that an automatic renewal?
Well,
It's an automatic.
that's in the agreement.
Yes.
And so what are we talking about? 12 years, 20
I
years?
see.
And by then, my eldest apo is 5.5. He will be old enough to be conscripted. And I don't want any trouble unnecessarily with the country with more than 1.3 billion.
In our backyard, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
In fact, if they jump 1 foot at the same time, there'll be a tsunami.
Okay.
And you know, if you look at President Cojuangco, and
what could
also
happen in the
Cardinal
future.
Tagle,
Yes.
Cardinal Sin.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
in varying degrees, we all may have a percentage of Chinese blood. So we have a long history also of friendship.
Yes.
So we don't want to be enemies with anybody if it's in our best interest. So we'll see what 2016 will bring. If I'm still around, maybe we can talk again here.
It is good to talk to you always, Senator Saguisag. It's nice to see you again.
Well, same here.
We've been talking to former Senator Rene Saguisag about the Philippines' new military deal with the United States. We went through history with him, and we're looking ahead. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for joining us on Talk Thursday.